Great. So Amalade, could you please advance us to the, thank you, Kayla, to the next slide? Wonderful. So I thought that we would begin by sharing with you a little bit about our program and what it is, what we're here to do. We are the very first undergraduate program in the nation for curious and motivated students in any field who will revolutionize the multi-billion-dollar art industry. We have career-driven curriculum and also amazing historic resources here on the campus of the Atlanta University Center. We're supported by the Alice L. Walton Foundation, and we offer here at Spelman College, Morehouse College, and Clark Atlanta University a major in art history and minors in art history and curatorial studies. The idea of the minors is that we think about teaching this material in a way that it can be interdisciplinary. That is, that if you have a student who is interested in studying medicine or chemistry or business and finance, that minoring in curatorial studies will enable them to think in a multifaceted way about the major area of study. We also believe that by enabling students to have a minor, it enables them to think expansively about the field of art history and the field of curatorial studies in ways that will really truly change it for the better in the future. Our early college program is designed to encourage rising juniors and seniors in high school to pursue undergraduate studies in art history and curatorial studies. And this summer, we will have our 4th iteration of the early college program, and we're really excited to be sharing that with you. So the early college program in art history and curatorial studies is a free co-educational program. It's designed, as I said earlier, to encourage rising junior and senior high school students of color to pursue undergraduate studies in art history and curatorial studies. Students complete the Ways of Seeing Art History, Curating, and Museums course for 3 undergraduate credits during the time that they're with us for 4 weeks over the summer. The course consists of lectures, projects, workshops, and one-on-one sessions with professionals at the High Museum of Art. And so the course also is taught on the campus of Spelman College, but also at the High Museum of Art as well. So students have this really exciting way to not only have the sort of living experience on a college campus, but also to have an educational experience in our classrooms on a college campus, and also to take advantage of the resources that we have at Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark Atlanta. And then they have the opportunity to learn in a museum, the leading museum in the Southeast, based here in Atlanta, as well as to sample other arts institutions in and around the city of Atlanta. We place a very strong emphasis on exposure to career paths in art history and curatorial studies as well. And in this slide, I just wanted to share before we go to the next one that we have images from the very first summer of the early college program, where students are looking in the upper left-hand image in the Atlanta Art Conservation Center. They're learning about art conservation. How do you take care of works of art that might be put on exhibit or held in archives, or perhaps even damaged in some sort of way? The image in the middle, of course, is that first class, that inaugural class, and the gentleman standing in the middle, and I know some of these images may not be so big for you, he is actually a sophomore now at Morehouse College. So we're really proud of his having matriculated through the early college program, as well as having chosen Morehouse as his undergraduate school of choice. And then the image on the bottom is also at the High Museum of Art, but I want to point out to you that our own Kayla Jackson, who's presenting with us today, was an instructor in that course in the first iteration, and you can see her there on the right-hand side sharing with students in an exhibition at the High. So as I said earlier, we're located at the Atlanta University Center. The Atlanta University Center is a dynamic space in Southwest Atlanta. It's a historic space where we have 3 schools: Clark Atlanta University, Morehouse College, and Spelman College. and approximately 9,000 students across all three campuses. Clark Atlanta is the only university of the three institutions that is, in addition to undergraduate degrees and being co-ed, it offers as well master's degrees and PhD degrees. It's also the home of the Clark Atlanta University Art Museum, which is an amazing, amazing museum that was begun by Hale Woodruff and Nancy Elizabeth Prophet in the 1930s. And has a really, really foundational and historic collection of works of African-American art from a series of exhibitions that were held called the Atlanta Annuals for approximately 30 years in the middle part of the 20th century. In addition, Morehouse College, as many of you probably know already on the call, is an undergraduate college for men. And the brother school to Spelman College, which is the leading HBCU in the nation for women, a college for women. And so we have at each of these institutions really important resources and collections that students can take advantage of learning from. And in the next slide, I can share some more of that with you as well. So as I was saying, we're all held together by the Woodruff Library. And this slide actually comes from this beautiful, amazing, as you can see, light-filled space where we have massive collections and historic collections of archival materials, of books. There's also an art collection here at the Woodruff Library. And students have the opportunity to do research here and work firsthand, even in the archives. In addition, as I said before, there's the Clark Atlanta University Art Museum. At Morehouse, there's the King Collection. And at Spelman, we have the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art, which focuses particularly on works of art by women of the African diaspora. And then at Spelman, we have the Innovation Lab, and that's a really exciting space where students are really thinking about innovation as a way to really further their own studies in the world, and also to think about how the creation of new ideas through new technologies can be infiltrated into their own ways of studying and learning. In fact, each of the courses that we offer here, including the coursework for the early college program, are courses that have technology elements, that have elements from the Innovation Lab embedded into the assignments that students learn. So for example, not just because of having to shelter in place for the pandemic, our students actually were already doing digital and online exhibitions prior to being made to learn in this fashion. So there are ways that this type of technology is really driving the way we think students in our program and students in the early college program can continue to transform the art industry. And so you might be asking yourselves, if I have a student who is interested in art history or curatorial studies, what kind of work might they do? What kind of career choices do they have? And here in this slide, we have some examples. Students can work in auction houses as an auctioneer, as a specialist, as an art handler. And there's so many different ways that students can interact, for example, with galleries as a director, as sort of a specialist and a researcher at a gallery. Their jobs in artist studios, being an artist studio assistant. In museums, museums of course have multiple different entry points for jobs in places, especially where we know people of African descent are incredibly underrepresented. And so we're looking at, in museums, areas like conservation, which I mentioned earlier, or even registration, thinking about new ways to work with collections and doing community engagement projects as well. There are also opportunities to work with private collectors. And in the slide in the lower left-hand corner, or the image in the lower left-hand corner, we see Pamela Joyner, who is a well-known collector and philanthropist, especially of abstract art, in her own collection. So to imagine working one-on-one with someone who is putting together a collection or working as a philanthropist, these are some of the kinds of positions that we can think about. There are, of course, jobs in Washington, D.C. It's a place where I call home. I grew up in Silver Spring, and we had the National Mall and so many museums there where students could have the opportunity to fill a number of different positions. There are a lot of opportunities, of course, in the online space, and also working with art fairs around the country and also globally. And now we're just going to take a moment to see a really lovely presentation that tries to give you a sense of what the early college program experience is like. It's about 2 minutes.
I am not sure if the video is going to play, so Dr. Finley, you might actually just move forward.
Okay, do you want to see if there's maybe a place to push where the advance button is, or? No?
No.
Okay. All right, well, we'll move forward. And so in moving forward, I'm going to introduce Kayla Jackson and welcome Kayla Jackson to the stage. And as I shared before, she's a graduate of Spelman College and a current PhD candidate at Harvard University in art history, and also someone who was an instructor in the early college program and someone that we're really excited to learn from today. Thank you so much for joining us, Kayla.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Finley. Can everyone hear me really well? I have an AirPod. We're good? Okay. So as Dr. Finley mentioned, I'm a third-year PhD student in the history of art and architecture. And I was born and raised in North Carolina. I just got back home yesterday, so it feels really, really good to be in my grandparents' house. And I applied only to Spelman when I was a high school student. I just knew there was something about the institution and about the way that I felt when I got to that space that I had to go to Spelman. And I didn't apply to any of the major schools in North Carolina, so no Duke, no Chapel Hill, nothing else. And when I got here, well, to Spelman, I thought I wanted to be a studio art major. And I started doing studio art and kind of just happened upon, being a museum assistant at the Spelman College Museum of Fine Art, which has been very integral to the way that I even conceive of a curatorial practice. And upon meeting Dr. Brownlee, who's the former director, I just knew whatever it was that she did, I wanted to be a part of that. And I was one of the students that was in the inaugural cohort of curatorial studies students at the college level. So through that program, much of what the students in the early college program would be receiving is what they were kind of working out with us as college students. So we went to local galleries in Atlanta, a lot of time spent at the High Museum of Art, and understanding Spelman's collections, but also Clark Atlanta University galleries. And in doing that program, I became aware of the Melon Undergraduate Curatorial Fellowship at the High Museum of Atlanta. It's now at 5 other institutions across the nation. And I worked there for 2 years studying folk and self-taught art with the curator, Catherine Gentleson. So the bottom picture where there's 4 of us, that's actually in the same gallery that Professor Finley showed earlier, where we had students for the early college program, and actually curated that part of the permanent collection around a concept of diasporic connections, which is a part of what I study now. And then also, as Professor Finley noted, I was one of the teacher assistants for the early college program in its first run. So it's very exciting to be on the other side of this and sharing what is, like, I feel like the first part of my journey with you all, and the faith that the institution had in me to go the distance and the way that I've been able to grow from being at Spelman. You can advance. So my pathway is one that's more academic. There are many different ways that people approach getting into art history. Some people began working. There are many students that have graduated with me or after me that went into different curatorial assistant positions. Some students did masters. There are many different ways you can go about it. My pathway is particularly I went straight through. So as soon as I graduated in 2019 from Spelman, I enrolled in Harvard University. And since I've been there, I've been a research assistant, particularly at the Radcliffe Institute, which is really nice because it's very interdisciplinary. I worked with a lot of students and graduates in the Graduate School of Design, but also the Graduate School of Education. And so in the top picture, it's me, and then there's the artist Tamashi Jackson, who's in the storefront. And so I worked on her show, Brown 2, which is about Brown versus Board of Education and desegregation in Boston, which ended up informing my dissertation idea. I was also able to co-organize student lectures, so bringing in professors from other institutions to discuss their work. And the reason that I began doing it was because I noticed that they had not had any Black professors speak in the program. And also I got to work with Dr. Finley again when I curated and when I co-organized the legacies of the slave trade, which was really amazing. And now it's going to be a publication. So I've had a lot of opportunities kind of just stem from being from Spelman, and you start to grow your network through these programs. And it's really important starting in high school, something I wish I could have done, because I definitely didn't enter Spelman, even knowing what a curator was or understanding what it meant to have a PhD in art history. And that completely transformed me once I got to Spelman. And then other opportunities I've had, which also is very deeply connected to the programs in the AUC, is catalog publication. So I've had curators reach out to me because of work that I did at the High, exhibition reviews, old professors that have now moved institutions, sharing that with me, and then artist talks at Harvard Museum.
You can go up.
And you can keep going.
Up.
So currently I am trying to define my own curatorial project, not curatorial project, but dissertation project. So my main interest is modern and contemporary art of the African diaspora, and primarily in the Black Atlantic, so Caribbean, Europe, Western Africa, and then the United States. I've really shaped a project around Black girlhood, so that's why I have sort of a truncated version of The Problem We All Live With, which is a painting that was originally an illustration for Look magazine by Norman Rockwell. And a lot of my considerations of Black girlhood and the visuality around it stem from my encounter with this painting when I was working on a project about Deborah Roberts. And so also by proxy, Black feminist thought and collage aesthetics. So my qualifying paper, which I just completed this past semester, was collage choreographies, and it's about an artist named Deborah Roberts. So the interesting and important part of Spelman that comes through is that when your student is attending Spelman or Morehouse or any college in the AUC, there are museum openings, and oftentimes they're able to meet artists, curators, and other individuals that are really kind of well integrated into the art world, and those connections really do remain, because it's one of the reasons that I was able to get Deborah Roberts on the phone, and she was willing to talk with me about her practice and her projects, and really not only affirming what I had written about her and thinking about how she's sort of fracturing images of Black girls that I feel is really compelling, but being able to know how she came to doing the work that she's doing, why it's so important to her, and what she's thinking about Black girlhood and Black childhood, and how I can weave that into my own reading of her work in concert with other artists that are doing similar activities. Advance, please. And now I'm thinking about Black girlhood and the poetics of rupture. And so it stems from my work with Deborah Roberts, but also thinking more broadly about how Black women artists in particular, but also I'm using kind of Norman Rockwell as a touchstone, and also images of desegregation that feature Black girls quite prominently, to think about how Black girls embody a particular type of precarious citizenship. And this project is really a testament to the many ways that Spelman has influenced what it is that I believe is important for art history to attend to and to note, because there are a lot of gaps and challenges when it comes to writing art history, and there are spaces that really need to be realized that haven't been. And it's one of the ways that you can start to think about the importance of the work that students can do in art history. It's not without material consequence. Understanding how Black people are seen, but more importantly right now for me, how Black girls are seen, is something that has legal consequence. It changes the way that they're schooled. It changes the way that they come to know themselves. And so it's not just, pretty pictures and nice museum spaces. The work that students can do in the art world and in process of understanding sort of visual logic is something that's really important to tap into, and we need your students' voices. And I think there's only one more slide left, and it's just one that I really like, and it's about how we're surrounded by images every day, and we're making sense of our world through images. A lot of times we have these moments like with Winter Moore Rogers, where you have these Black girls that come to symbolize moments, just like Ruby Bridges did for desegregation in New Orleans. And we can't take these moments for granted, and we can't take what we're seeing for granted. And I think that's one of the most important things for me with this dissertation, is that I'm interested in the ways that we come to know Black girls in public space and their performances, and what that can teach us about citizenship and humanity, and just overall understandings of, what does it mean to be a human and possess ourselves fully. So that's my project, that's my journey, and that's my spiel. If you have any questions, I don't know if there's like a Q&A time. Okay, good.
Kayla, there is at the end. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, so thank you very much, and welcome again, everyone, to our summit. It's so wonderful to see you all here today. And also thank you very much, Kayla, for sharing your academic journey from Spelman to Harvard and your very interesting and critical research. So in these slides, one thing that we really want to emphasize today throughout our summit are just the options and opportunities that are available for students. And so perhaps if you're a guidance counselor at a high school or at a nonprofit or something like that, you do meet with students and are kind of trying to answer that question for them about, well, what can they actually do if they want to enter these fields? And so we spoke a little bit earlier when Dr. Finley shared that kind of collage about the spaces that students can think about working in. And these two slides that I'm going to present kind of dial into some of the data behind the work that we do. So on the left-hand side, we have a list of median salaries. So when we're thinking about, just to take one step back, when we're thinking about advising students in this area, we might approach it in two ways. So on the left, we're thinking about the actual, positions that they have and what they make. We realize that some students are motivated by this. They want to know, well, if I do this, how much can I actually make? Because we know in our field that the idea of the starving artist is very prevalent, and it seems to kind of trickle down into other areas of students pursuing careers in the arts. And we know that that's simply not true. So here in the median salaries, we see results from a survey that went out and was administered by the American Association of Art Museum Directors. So they looked at museums specifically around the country and kind of looked at what those median salaries are. So here you can see them. I'm not going to read each of them, but this is really just to kind of demonstrate the range and how you can have a lucrative and fulfilling career in these areas. Another important thing to note is that these are just focused on museums. And so sometimes students also don't realize that if you're interested in working in a museum, that doesn't only mean being a curator or maybe working in the education department, but there are a lot of other areas within museum work that they can consider. And the second part to that, the second part to that too, is that as these are just museums, there are other areas, as we've shown in earlier slides. So galleries, auction houses, nonprofits, other areas that have similar salaries to some of the ones that we've seen outlined on the slide. So that's one point. The second one is kind of to direct your attention to the box on the right-hand side of your screen. And it's so what we do is when we're advising students in the program, we also recognize that we have students that have other interests, right? So maybe you have a student that's interested in computer science or chemistry. And so we like to talk to them about ways that they can combine their existing interests into our fields of study, because they are very interdisciplinary. So just to kind of point out a few examples, if we have a student that's interested in majoring in art history and minoring in curatorial studies, they might think about in art professions and art museums, similar to the ones listed to the left, a gallery director, an arts administrator, professor. Whereas if you have a student that's interested in computer science, we might think about a major or a double major in art history and computer science, because those students might think about web development, application design, arts and educational technology. And I think something that we've all learned as a result of the pandemic is just the importance of virtual spaces and how even more into the future, we're going to be looking at those computer scientists and other people to kind of innovate the ways that we connect. And so those are just kind of ways to think about advising students that are interested in careers in these spaces. Next slide, please, Malade. Okay, so another thing that we also wanted to share, we know that some people also just want to know the numbers, want to know the data, so we have that as well. And this information is also available online too, if you want to have it to reference. But when we're thinking about work in the arts, we like to kind of talk about some of the numbers behind it. So, you know, in 2019, the value of arts and cultural production in America was not 919.7 billion. So that's a little over 4% of the gross domestic product. When we're looking at global sales of art and antiquities, it reached an estimated 50.1 billion. So earlier when we were talking about opportunities in this field, you know, we called it the multi-billion-dollar art industry, and we're not exaggerating. We're just looking at the global picture of the sales of arts around the world. The arts are also popular. So this figure is from 2017, but 54% of our country's adult population attended artistic, creative, or cultural activity. So over half the population. Just to kind of advance a little bit more, when we're thinking about actual careers that students can enter into, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics for the United States, the employment of archivists, curators, and museum workers is expected to grow by 19% over the next 10 years. And that's faster than average for all occupations. And so, you know, I'll just end on, you know, something that as people that work in the educational field, we understand that, you know, when we're thinking about the future and intelligence and robots and things like that, that in our field, 74% of educators say that the risk of job automation is lower in professions that require creative problem solving skills, such as the ones that students learn in our program. So I'll end on that. And I just want to thank you all again for joining us today. And we really hope to kind of speak to you later and your students.
Thank you, Rachel.
Hello, I'm Omalade and I'm the program coordinator. So in this section, we'll be discussing how you all can help better support your students in their application process. And Dr. Finley will begin.
Sorry.
No worries.
Okay. Thank you so much, and Amalade, and thank you for your part of the presentation to Rachel and Kayla. So here in identifying ways to provide student support, we thought we would begin with a question: is my student a strong candidate? How can I help them to strengthen their application? And so, if the student demonstrates curiosity and interest in culture, art, or history, then of course the answer is absolutely. We're looking for students who are ready to experience and explore new opportunities and to contribute to discussions inside and outside of the classroom. Some of the tips that we would share for you include working with students to set a timeline, and this is, thinking about the decisions that they're making to apply to the early college program, and also working on the application itself. Emphasizing to students the importance of paying attention to detail. As I'm sure you're all aware, when we are, putting together, whether it's a job application, a fellowship application, applying for anything, it's often in the detail of the instructions that sometimes we might get sort of waylaid and not really put our best foot forward if we don't pay attention to those details. And those details are how you fill out certain sections of the application itself. And being sure that you're doing what is asked of you in answering the questions that are some of the questions that are on the application, for example, are two-part questions. Some of the questions on the application also involve, for example, consulting another resource. So making sure that that you make the student aware that these are the things that will help them to put their best foot forward. It's also important to discuss with students the selection process of choosing a teacher counselor to fill out the recommendation form and things to consider about how that teacher counselor has worked with the student, is aware of the student's abilities, can speak best to the student's abilities as someone who would benefit from the early college program and also excel in it, and someone who would also contribute to the early college program as well. And then also encourage students to have their application materials proofread by a mentor, by someone who can look through each section of the application to let them know that what they've written corresponds to the question that's asked, but also to help check for even minor things like typos. These kinds of details are details that we take into consideration when we're evaluating the applications themselves. And then offer opportunities to discuss concerns and possible apprehensions about the program or one of the colleges that they may be interested in attending. I'll also say, and this is not necessarily on the slide, but just in thinking about the opportunity that the early college program offers for students who have these interests in art and culture and history. It's opportunity in the classroom, opportunity at, again, the historic AUC, but the ability to move with their cohort in and around the city of Atlanta to the High Museum, to other galleries, to other exhibitions, to sculpture parks, and so on, and to have the ability to sort of develop a sense of ownership of their knowledge, but also new friendships, to create even new opportunities for mentorship from the people that they encounter, and also the way to kind of think about learning in the classroom and then applying that learning in a museum or a gallery setting. It really helps to build upon the learning process and to enable one to really have concrete examples to something that they might read in a book or see in a presentation, to make that type of learning something that really sits in and concretizes in the brain going forward.
And I want to add one last point. An application like this can really bring up different feelings for students in terms of their abilities. So this is also a place and a space to encourage your students, because whether it is the actual application, they can end up feeling as if they're not qualified for such things, and it might not be supporting them through the actual application, but also guiding them alongside and talking to their abilities and encouraging them in that way.
Thank you, Amalde.
You're welcome. And for our recruiting materials, these are the tools and offerings we have. When we finish this summit, I will follow up with an email, and through the email, there'll be a form that's on the right-hand side. And through there, you can request our physical collateral. So we have postcards, trifolds, and brochures. And you would just need to provide your name, your organization or school. And if you're in Atlanta, we would like to coordinate with y'all to make sure that they're being picked up or arranged to be dropped off, just because that will make it a little bit easier on our end. And then if you're not based in Atlanta, we will ship all of our materials to you. But we also offer informational sessions. If you email me, we would be able to set that up for your schools. We're also interested in attending activity fairs and any other things that have to do with summer programs. We are really interested in engaging with students and sharing our offerings.
So is this me, Amalade?
It is.
Okay, thank you. So we just wanted to go over a checklist for you so that you're aware regarding the application. So the things that are needed, I think the first thing I would say is that for summer 2022, our program dates have yet to be announced, but typically the program runs about the third week of July through the third week of June through the third week of July. And once we have those dates, we'll make sure that you're aware of them. And of course, they will be available on our application materials. The application opens on the 1st of February, so do look out for that. It will be available on our website. And the priority application deadline is April 1st. So that's a 2-month window that students will have to take time to complete their application, to request their letters of recommendation, and to submit it, to have it on time, especially to be considered for priority application consideration. And so for the checklist, you would need, of course, the application, and you can ask Rachel for that application. Also, the early college program in art history and curatorial studies teacher recommendation form is needed. There's a student leadership academic evaluation as well. And then in addition to that, there is the early college program in art history and curatorial studies guidance counselor form. So in addition to the recommendation from a teacher, we also would like a recommendation from a guidance counselor to accompany the application. And then of course, their high school transcripts would be needed as well. So again, the application, the recommendation form for the teacher, a student leadership academic evaluation, the counselor recommendation form, and the transcript. So we also thought we would share with you what a typical course schedule might look like in the Ways of Seeing Art History and Curating and Museums course. Again, this is a course that is worth 3 college credits. And once the student successfully completes the course, those 3 college credits would be applied to either Spelman, Morehouse, or Clark Atlanta, the school of their choice, where they matriculate and choose art history or curatorial studies as their major or minor. But those credits, again, those would transfer in when the students are accepted and begin matriculation. So this is, again, just a typical schedule. And in terms of the time frame, you can see on Mondays and Wednesdays, students would meet in AUC classrooms here on campus. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they would meet at the High Museum of Art. And at the High Museum of Art, I should point out, there's a meeting room, a seminar room where students meet. And then there are also courses that take place in the museum. So if you see the image on the right-hand side, this is just an example of how students might be having a session within the museum in front of a work. And this is actually a work that the student is lecturing on by a local artist named Radcliffe Bailey, who's based here in Southwest Atlanta, not too far from where our campus is. And then on Fridays, students will be invited to local and regional field studies. So going to, for example, the Atlanta Contemporary Museum, or touring the Martin Luther King Jr. Historic Site. These are some of the kinds of things that students do on Fridays, or going, as I mentioned earlier, to the Atlanta Art Conservation Center. And so week 1, you see there's an introduction to art history and curatorial studies in museums. We do a critical viewing, looking and writing. We talk about research, libraries and archives, and also about the High Museum of Art and its collections. We might have a guest curator or a guest lecturer as an art historian. And then there are field trips and assignments, of course, each week. Week 2, there are lectures, and in this example here, the lectures are going sort of in the earlier period, looking at prehistoric Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and medieval art, also Africanisms in early American art, Renaissance art, modern art, African American art, all pre-1900. And then, in the museum, students would be at the High. They might look at, for example, the folk and self-taught artist work that Katie Gentleson is in charge of as curator there. They might also be looking at the amazing civil rights photography collection. There's also opportunity, of course, for students to go to our innovation lab on campus and also our museums on campus at Spelman and at Clark Atlanta University. May I please have the next slide, Amalade? Okay. And then moving forward, and this is the same course, but just kind of spread over 2 slides. In week 3, we would move forward to the 20th century, looking at the Harlem Renaissance, and then even forward more in the 20th century at the Black arts movement of the 1960s. We talk about modern art and also global foundations of what modernism could be, contemporary art and visual culture as well. And then on curatorial studies at the high, we would look, of course, in their modern and contemporary collections, and then talk about things like conservation, education, community engagement, exhibition design, registrarial, and so on. And then in this example here, we go to the Clark Atlanta Museum during that week. There would also be opportunities to talk about things like careers in the arts and how you find your own pathway and inroads into different types of careers. Also thinking about how graduate school would be an effective way to do one's work. And then also we talk about professional development, how students are also going to have the opportunity in this course to present their own projects in the very end. So we guide students and mentor students, and we try to help them learn presentation skills using new technologies, as well as speaking in person, as you see in the slide here, in front of students as well.
Thank you, Dr. Finley. We have
You're
a
welcome.
representative from the High that will speak to our partnership with the High and a little bit more as to what we said that students do at and with the High.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Farron.
I'm Farron Manuel, the Melon Fellowships coordinator here at the High Museum of Art. And I'll say about the early college program is actually modeled on our Melon Curatorial Fellowship, which we realized was a great instructional tool for figuring out what student skill sets were and giving them an introduction to what it would be like to participate in a fellowship here at the museum for an extended period of time. So it's really a crash course in what you all would experience as a college intern or a college fellow at a museum. And it's an extremely unique opportunity for a high school student to participate in this type of opportunity. So throughout the weeks in the program, you all will work on an exhibition project with us. In recent years, this has been done online using a software called Omeka, which is an online exhibitions and art data storage platform. It's somewhat similar to TMS. I'm not sure if you all have been introduced to that program yet, but pretty much it's a software that holds images and also content about those images or works of art. And you all have the opportunity to construct a group exhibition. So, you really get insight into what it's like when curators jointly work on exhibition projects, and, you get to refine ideas. And sometimes your ideas don't always mesh so well. So you're going to have to learn the art of negotiating and selecting images and refining your theme. So all really good problems to have in working through these processes to develop certain skill sets. And you also will have a writing project where you're working from an image, and you're really doing some deep looking and communicating why this image resonates with you to your peers. And the other project you all work on with us, I'm not sure about the third project that you all I think I've already covered it in the format of those other two.
Mhm.
But throughout your weeks with us, you all will really gain a deep understanding of museum work and build a lot of skill sets that'll be, very useful and transferable as you move throughout the program and also go into college if you're interested in, going into a museum studies course or an art history course. So you'll learn a lot of useful things with us here.
Farron, I have to say thank you so much for sharing from your perspective at the High Museum. And I also wanted to just uplift you and shout out that you are a CAU alum. And so we are happy to have you really speaking to something that as someone who's matriculated through one of our universities at the AUC, and also someone who is in the inside and often works with our students during early college program. I'm just really thankful that you're here with us today, and hope that if there's anything else that you wanted to share, that you feel free to do so.
Great to be here. The other thing that I'll share is, we typically have office hours throughout the program. So those are really good opportunities to get some further clarity on your project for one, but sometimes the students may just have a question for me or for Dr. Finley or for someone else on our team here at the High Museum, to learn more about museum work and to gain insight into things like mentorship or developing your eye as a viewer or as an arts professional. And we've really gotten students that have surprised us over the years with the amount of things that you all know about this field already, and how much you're able to learn throughout this time, and how many things we even get to learn from you. I'll say I'll just kind of share from my perspective. I started out volunteering at the Clark Atlanta University Art Museum, and I didn't really think that this many years later I'd still be working in this great creative space. And there's a future in art, contrary to what popular narratives are about art, and what people should or should not go to school for. There's a future in art. There are many important roles and important educators in this space, and I think it's something that could be very real for you all if this is what you choose to focus on.
Thank you so much, Farron. You have totally teed up the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, you all.
All right. So we wanted to share, just as Farron said, there's a future in art, there's a future in this field, and there is definitely a future that, like Farron and like Kayla, AUC graduates are forging the path forward for us all. And so here in this slide, we have examples for you of our broad network of alumni leaders in the visual arts. In the center is Amy Sherald, best known, I think, to most as the painter of the beautiful portrait of Mrs. Obama that's currently on tour in the Obama portraits. And to her left is Walter Massey, who was a Morehouse alum and also president emeritus of Morehouse College. Excuse me, president emeritus of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. But just to talk about, the way that this program and also the career pathways forward can really lead just about anywhere. There are, I want to say, I know of a good handful of college presidents who have studied art history or who come from the field of the arts, and just to think about the leadership roles that are out there. Naima J. Keith, who is a curator at the LA County Museum and also one of the co-directors of Prospect 5, which is a triennial of contemporary art based in New Orleans. And that's in New Orleans and up right now through the end of January. Sanford Biggers, another artist, a well-known artist, currently an artist exhibiting around the world, as a Morehouse alum as well. Dr. Richard J. Powell, esteemed art historian who's at Duke University, the author of many of the books that we teach. In fact, one of the books that students will have in the class. He is, again, another Morehouse alum. And then Adrienne Edwards, a Spelman alumna, who is the director of curatorial affairs at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York. So just in terms of, thinking about, well, what would one do after ECP? We have a lot of things to say about that, especially with regards to support. There is a network of ECP alums already formed, and there are alumni events that take place throughout the academic year. We really like to bring our previous ECP students back together because we know that even those who have participated in the program in the virtual format have formed connections and friendships over time. We also often frequently ask our previous participants to participate in surveys because we really want to know where they are, what they've learned, and how they continue in the field. That this type of data, again, is really important for us to continue to do this work and to continue to make this program available. We can also provide support regarding the admissions process to Clark Atlanta, to Morehouse, or to Spelman. So we really want to work with students who are interested once they complete ECP in returning to the AUC and enrolling in any of our 3 colleges and university on campus. We also provide support with regards to scholarships for art history majors. In fact, there is a first-year art history scholarship that students are eligible to apply for. And it really helps to offset the cost of a college education. There are paid summer internships in our program around the country doing amazing things within the field, working at art galleries, museums, auction houses, and so on. Also, there's access to Atlanta-based art museums and institutions, and then domestic and international field study. We just returned about a month ago from our first field study trip since the pandemic to Los Angeles, where we were present for the opening of the Obama portraits at the LA County Museum, another exhibition there called Black American Portraiture, excuse me. And also we traveled to different sites and research institutions in LA and met with leaders in the field in that arts ecosystem. So this is just one example of a field study trip that we would take with students once they've matriculated with us. And then there are professional career development events and resources that we host throughout the academic year, often co-curricular events. We also think about ways to help students once they graduate get placed in jobs. So we always have career events taking place in the fall and the spring as well. So there's a lot that we do to support our students while they're ECPers, post ECP, and then once they come and matriculate with us at the AUC. We really look forward to having you join us. We've shared here our website, aucrcollective.org, our Instagram. If you don't already follow us, please do. It's one of the most dynamic Instagram channels out there. Facebook, we're on Facebook as well, and in LinkedIn. And please sign up for our newsletter. We'll be publishing our last edition of the year in the coming week. And now we're really happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Finley.
Sorry.
And before the questions, I just wanted to make sure and emphasize that after the conclusion of this, I'll send an email to request our materials and our collateral. We would really appreciate if you shared it with any students that are interested, any educators that are interested. We're really trying to get our physical material out in the hands of students.
Does anyone have a question? You can, if you'd like, you can put it into the chat, or you can also, is it possible for them to unmute themselves, Amalade, and just ask a question?
Yeah, yes, they're able to unmute themselves.
Okay, thank you, Kristen.
You can also, as Dr. Finley said, if you're more comfortable, you can put questions in the chat and we can answer them.
Hello, my name is Denise King. I'm at Cambridge High School in Nashville, Tennessee. And I just want to say thank you for the information on this program. I'm really excited, and I'm going to be sharing with some of our students who are in our visual arts pathway in our Arts and Communications Academy here. I think that we will have some really good candidates to apply for the program. So I really appreciate it. And if I do have questions that I can't answer as the students are applying, I'll be sure to reach out.
Thank you so much, Ms. King. Thank you so much. We're really happy that you're here, and we'll be sure to make sure that we have your address to send you our collateral materials to share with the students.
Yes, definitely. That would be great. That would be
Okay,
great.
all right. Is there anyone else that might have a question about the application or the dorms or anything like that?
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Karen Smith, and I'm actually joining you from Bermuda. I am a parent of a budding young artist, and I'm just wondering, is this program available to international students? I saw your ad on Instagram and was quite curious, so that's why I'm joining.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So it is open to international students. We had a student in the second year when we were virtual who joined us from Addis in Ethiopia. And we had a student last year who was from the Caribbean. So most definitely, please have your student apply.
Okay, thank you. Excellent.
You're welcome. Are there more questions? And I guess one thing I'll say, just in terms of, we're anticipating that we will be in person this coming year. And I think we're all kind of bracing for the winter and hoping for the best, but we do anticipate that we'll be in person. And with that being said, typically the housing, when we are in person, the students who identify as women are housed on Spelman's campus, and the students who identify as men are housed on Morehouse's campus. We are in conversation with Clark, which is a coeducational institution, about what possibilities might be there for housing students at that institution as part of early college. But I just wanted you to know that. We're located in Southwest Georgia, which is a historically Black, not Georgia, Southwest Atlanta, historically Black and really influential neighborhood of Atlanta, where many of our statespeople and other people involved in higher level parts of the government, not just in the state of Georgia, but others who've held national roles, have often made their home. In terms of our institutions, Spelman College Museum of Fine Art is celebrating its 25th anniversary. And I'll say the same actually of the Clark Atlanta Museum. They both kind of reopened, one moved to new buildings in 1996. And so with that, each of the institutions will have by that time exhibitions open for students to see. So in all of our campuses, there's art everywhere, and the campuses themselves are, just in terms of their place within the history of colleges and universities, they are historic institutions themselves. So I think there's a lot there that the students would really be able to take advantage of, and also find pride in having attended the early college program. Any questions?
I think that's it, Dr. Finley. We can probably wrap up.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to say thank you all so much for taking the time with us today, this 1 hour of your day. We're so happy to have had the opportunity to share with you about the early college program in art history and curatorial studies. And we really look forward to hearing from you and also seeing your students' applications. As we said, the application will open on the 1st of February. But in advance of that, it's going to be our great pleasure to share with you collateral materials that you can share with your students or post in your offices or at your institution. And that also after the 1st of February, we will begin information sessions each week where if you're interested or if you know of students who are interested, they can join us for about an hour to find out more about the program and ask questions. I also want to just highlight again that the 1st of April is the priority deadline for applications and that we really hope to have the opportunity to host your students here in the coming summer. Thank you so much again, and please feel free to be in touch with me, Rachel Brown, or Omalade Obuwale if you have any questions going forward. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.